Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Bomb Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. We hope that you help support us by watching these films. Now, let's start the Bomb Squad. Welcome back to the Bomb Squad, where we review bad movies and good movies and bad movies. So today we're doing one of those. Um, yeah, make sure you watch my movies. They're on Tubi. Go check out that short, the Freddy short. It's doing good. And there's going to be some more shorts on the way. I forgot to ask William a question about music, but I'll ask him after the podcast. So today on our we're doing a special because we've been doing a lot of movies, but we've been kind of giving ourselves like an easy way out because we've been doing movies that like no one's heard of but that we like.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, yeah, this is fun. We love Chappie. But
Yeah.
then every once in a while we got a challenge. We got to see, hey, can we watch one of these bad movies and see if it's really good? And so today we're covering a movie that was so bad it caused two of the creators to quit making movies altogether.
Yeah.
It was so
Yeah.
it became a joke on. It was so bad that it created the original creator who inspired the movie to also say, "I will never work with Hollywood again."
Yeah.
And then he said, "Please, Mr. Snake God, can you sacrifice their careers?" And the Snake God apparently said yes.
He really
Um,
might be a magical man.
he is
His rituals might work. I don't know. If
this
anyone's
book.
do, I wouldn't
he
be
he
surprised if Alan
he
Moore
is
is the one.
proven correct more often than not in these things. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's wild.
he's definitely proven correct in how much he's a creepy old man who lusts after Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz.
And he's still not in jail.
And
Whom
he's
among
still
us?
because
Magic.
he puts it in his magazines. Oh, this one's definitely not getting monetized thanks to that joke.
Oh, good. I can talk about the differences in the comic right away then.
We're in 150. Okay, so we're doing 2003's the last movie by Sean Connery and by Stephen Norrington, who
Mhm.
directed one of my favorite movies and the best comic book movie of all time. It also stars Sean Connery. It stars Stuart Townsend. I know what you're thinking. What Stuart Townsend? Hit of the hits. It stars Jason Fleming. It stars Tony Cure. I don't know why I'm saying these. Like none of these names are familiar
Right.
to you guys, but if
Yeah.
you
I
see
know.
them or you hear them, you'll recognize.
You'll be like, oh, that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Shane West. You don't know who Shane West is, but if you saw him, you'd be like, oh yeah. But yeah, so we're
He's
talking about
around.
2003's LXG, otherwise known as The League of Extraordinary gentlemen. William, will you tell me what this movie is about?
Okay, well, it's sort of like an old version of the Avengers in a way, where this guy is rounding up all of like literature's weirdest, most powerful characters, like uh, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Captain Nemo, and he's gathering these people because there's this weird guy trying to take over England, and so
Right.
they band together to fight crime, and it's just like old story characters repurposed as a band of superheroes.
Right.
And there's double crossings, there's action, and you get to see why Sean Connery, like we said, quit movies.
Also, so and before we continue, let me just add that this is based on a comic book series by Alan
Hmm.
Moore. The book is very different, but
Yeah,
this caused Alan Moore to say like, "Oh, it was so different that he was like, no, I don't want to ever see my work adapted again." He already lost the rights. That's why we have a Watchmen movie, a V for Vendetta movie, a Watchmen TV show, Watchmen figurines, Watchmen's meets Superman, Watchmen babies go on vacation. We have everything Watchmen. Because if DC and Warner Brothers know anything, it's how to treat their creatives. And so, guys, I just want to say before we start, what a cool idea this is. Like, oh, we're gonna take all these public domain characters because, like, it stars like Sean Connery's Alan Quartermain from King Solomon's Mine, a bunch of other those books. Peter Wilson plays Mina Harker from the book Dracula, and she plays a vampire. There, Dr. Jekyll's in it, the Invisible Man, Dorian Gray is the other character, and Captain Nemo is
hmm
the last one. And so like they've taken all these characters from like classic literature and they're putting them in this like adventure story about them teaming up to fight the ultimate evil, which is a twist that we'll get to. And they even oh no, they didn't do it in the comic book. They work for Champion Bond, who's James Bond's great uncle or some nonsense. But if you read the books and you're not up to date with every single British literature from the last 100 years, you're not gonna get half the references. I'm
yeah,
more just like,
Yeah, like
oh,
150 years at this point. It's so old.
right,
they're like,
Yeah.
oh,
yeah,
they have to go to Mars. They have to go to a trip to the moon. It's like nobody knows that reference, Alan Moore.
yeah,
Okay, you would have to understand like classic film, and by classic I mean the second film ever made.
right,
But it's interesting. Like, oh, we're gonna adapt this into a story. The movie does the same thing, but the book is interesting because like it's kind of like Chappie, where it's like, oh, this is a pretty slam dunk idea. Like you can kind of do whatever. It's just an adventure starring your some of your favorite characters, especially if you're British.
yeah,
But but the comic book's cool because it like takes it in a lot of directions that you would not think it would go. It does the classic Alan Moore like, hey, this movie's gritty and dark and
There
realistic.
is an edge to the comics
yeah,
that is.
yeah.
There's quite an edge.
Yeah, I think that the first time
Um,
you see Alan Quatermain, he's like smoking opium and like
yes, yes,
analyzing his like inner voids and dreams, and
and
it's like that
like
didn't happen in the movie.
uh,
the
Alan
book,
Quartermain's Alan Moore in the book. Let's be clear.
the
It's
book
literally
is
just Alan Moore.
the book is broken up into chapters, and I think every chapter has some kind of sexual assault attempted at least. It's like, hey, Alan Moore, did you know other things happen in the world? Um,
Yeah, they when they go in the book when they go to recruit the Invisible Man, it's not like, oh, he's up to some crime, stealing stuff invisibly. It's like he is at an all girls college and he is doing things
he's
that a rapist would
he's
be doing to
yeah,
these
Exactly what you
girls.
think.
they send the league to go investigate these women at a religious college who keep getting impregnated, and so they think it's God, and it's just the Invisible Man.
which is
And
which is
then
dark as shit. Like,
and
let's
then
be
Yeah,
it's like
clear.
that's the most offensive crime ever. But you'd think that like, oh, they're there to stop him, but no, Champion Bond's like, hey, you want to join our team? And
yeah,
you'll be
Yes,
forgiven for all
like
these crimes. I was
we're
like, oh
not
my god.
penalizing you for this. We
yeah.
just need your help.
So that's
Just
the and
drop the habit.
It's not even like a oh.
when you're spending $250 million on a movie, you're definitely not going to make half of your characters violent rapists. So
Right.
this
But
movie is very much watered down, and I feel like
Hmm.
okay, I don't know how you guys feel about this movie, but here's how I think about this movie. I feel like it's very almost like it's very easy to get distracted while watching this movie, but if you're paying attention to it, it's a pretty fun movie. It's not that bad.
I know. I
why.
didn't want to turn it off ever. I was into it.
I would almost say you need because there's a lot of little touches you'll miss if you're not paying attention. But if you're paying too close of attention, you're like, wait, what's happening? So it's almost like you want to be medium engaged.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny.
Yeah,
like there was never a point where I was bored, but also like I started watching this on Thursday, and then I realized halfway through that I had not been watching it like at all. And so then yesterday I watched it again and I was paying attention. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What I like about it, there's a lot of things that you could tell were almost added in post. Like at the very beginning of the movie, it's like a shipyard, right? And there's actually a nice touch that the 20th Century Fox logo fades into it's on the ship that's being robbed. I was like, oh, there's cute little things like that. Yeah. But then these guys who are so obviously Nazis, they're dressed exactly like Nazis, rob this place. I don't even know why they're robbing it, whatever. They're in a super tank. But then it's 1899, so they couldn't be Nazis. So to make it less confusing, there's a bunch of newspapers, and one of them says, "Not us," says Germany.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think this was gonna happen so quick, but this movie was too smart for Josh. What happens at the beginning is that these bad guys, they attack England in London, and they are all dressed in German clothes. And that's why they think it's Germany, and that's why Germany says "not us."
But they're dressed like Germany's from 40 years later.
Yeah,
they're not dressed they're not dressed like World War I Germans. They're dressed like World War II Germans.
Yes.
Then they go to Germany and they blow up the Hindenburgs. And they blame it on Britain. So that's the whole thing, because they're like, oh, Britain and Germany are about to start a war.
Right. And then it's
we need Alan Quartermain.
He's gonna stop these two countries from some kind of world war. They say.
I will say,
does that make you sweat, sir?
I think that's a smart idea, but it's not really Josh's fault, because the beginning happened so fast that you're like, wait.
This whole movie
what the
really
hell's
fast.
going on? Yeah, the whole movie's going real fast.
It never stops.
I will
Not
say
cool
that
way.
this movie, there's two reasons that I think this movie didn't do that good. I'm gonna cover the first one right now. It's too British. The guy who shows up to talk to Alan Quartermain to get him to join the Britain, to stop this war from starting. He's like, "You're Alan Quartermain. Your stories have thrilled boys for decades."
British
boys.
Like,
British boys. And I was like, if someone said something like that to me, I'd be like, don't ever describe me like that again. What? And then he's like, you need to do this for the crown. And I was like, man, it's too much. It's too British, guys. We don't understand what for the crown means.
No one's messing with that. There's also, that's a funny scene, because then the bad guy has sent 3 assassins to kill Alan Quartermain, because he knows that Alan Quartermain can prevent this. And these guys are all kind of dressed like Indiana Jones, but they have big metal plates.
Yeah.
And they're shooting at them and they're bouncing off. And he's like, they're indestructible. And Alan Quartermain's like, well, no, they're wearing metal plates. Just shoot. Don't shoot the metal part.
And in that fight scene, you can totally see how they're cutting around Sean Connery being way too old to do any stunts, and it's so distracting.
I forgive that. That's every movie these days.
You know what's funny is that
in this one,
watching Indiana Jones, the last one, and then watching this one, I was like, hey, better than Indiana. You guys made it. You guys did it way better than they did. Yeah. And I think it's funny because for some reason, Alan Quartermain in this movie, in that fight scene, uses 5 chairs or tables to take out the guy. He's constantly, anytime there's a gun, a knife, and a table, he just picks up the table and throws it at some dude's face. And I was like, all right, I mean, it works.
Yeah, it kills them.
Yeah. And then he goes, another line, because again, it's supposed to be before, it's Victorian world. Mm-hmm. And so Alan Quartermain goes, I've lost friends, white men and black alike. And I was like,
I mean, you would have to specify at the time.
Well, and
And he
so
calls
the thing,
Africa the Dark Continent.
yeah,
That
the
is
thing
what they
about
called it for like 200
Right. I
years.
forgot that it was during
So
like colonialism and like
you forget,
yeah,
like the
yeah.
British East Empire Company was like around doing
Hmm.
horrible shit at
it's
this
also
time.
funny that they're like, "Oh, you need to stop this guy because he's gonna make this place a living hell." And I was like, "Do you mean the British? Because they're the ones who made Africa."
Yeah. I know you guys don't like
Stop
these
you
people being
guys.
here. Yeah, this movie is like the ultimate like white male Christ like
Yeah,
figure kind of deal. Like everyone just worships him for no reason. He's a total
right.
asshole
He's
constantly.
he's just
And
he also they
yeah.
kind of do they have him do the quips, and some of them work, some of them don't. There's one I actually remembered from watching this in theaters where he's like, "All right, I'll go meet your boss," and they're walking down a pretty long staircase,
Hmm.
like kind of down into this like secret basement, and he
Oh
goes,
yeah.
"Where are we going? Australia?" It's just like,
I love
no,
that.
man, just keep going.
And so then he meets M. In this movie, it's not Monsieur Bond, it's M
It's
from
M,
the
which is
still from
clever.
Right, right.
and M's like, oh yeah, we went to the World War I, blah 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 blah, and he's like, here's your team, and he's like, this is Captain Nemo. He knows karate because he's a person of color. But
Yeah.
I will
And he
say
doesn't use guns, only swords.
they did pick Indian specific martial arts, so I'm gonna take it off the table.
Yeah, that guy, like, it's one of those things where that guy does a good job with what he has because he
Yeah, well, they all
doesn't get a
pretty much
lot.
do a good job.
Yeah,
And then he's like, "Here's Mina Harker, the Invisible Man's here somewhere, and here's Dorian Gray." And then
Hmm.
they're like, "Okay, cool." And then like the guy's like, "Oh, I gotta go." And he's like, "Talk amongst yourselves or
he's like,
something."
I
I don't
gotta
know.
go. Wink.
Yeah, yeah.
Josh, I don't know what you're doing, but you're way too loud.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're
Maybe
like
I'll
peaking.
I'll put my thing back a little bit.
I wish there was a way to control the volume. 14 minutes. I'll make sure to take this out. So yeah, so then they're like, "Here's, I'll be back." And then like all these bad guys come out, and then the Phantom comes out. So he looked like the Phantom of the Opera, and his face is all messed up, and he's like, "Hello," and he also talks like Skeletor, because he'll be like, "I want only your blood." You know, like that's how he
Yeah.
talks the whole time. And so they're gonna shoot him, and then they all like, oh, and then an American pulls out his gun, who's not in the comic book. He pulls out his gun. He's like, he winks at Sean Connery, and Sean Connery immediately knows what that means, which I was like, oh, cool. And
Yeah.
so then he shoots like one of the guys, and then everyone starts fighting everyone else. And then like at the end, Mina's like, someone has a knife to Mina, and they're like, "I'm going to stop you," and she's like, "I'm not the one that needs saving." And then she bites him. She's like, "I'm a vampire." And
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Cool.
Oh
All
my
right, let's get
god.
to this ship."
Yeah,
Everyone
after
seems
Sean
very
Connery is just like
cool.
such an asshole to her. He's just like, I'm not impressed by anything about
It,
you right
it's
now.
also
Mostly your vagina.
it's
Oh yeah,
also
he's very
funny.
He's
sexist.
extremely
Yeah.
sexist.
It's also funny, like how like this part is very realistic because Mina Harker's the only girl in the team, and everyone but the old men want to have sex with her. Like they all
Hmm.
try to take a shot and like hook it up with her, and like yeah. So anyway, so then they're like, okay, well this is the team. Let's all do it. And then and then they're like, who's this American kid? And the American's like, my name's Tom Sawyer, which I
Yeah.
will say he's not in the book because they only added him because they said they needed an American.
Hmm.
It's a smart
It,
addition. If you're
it's
gonna add
it's
an
a
Yeah,
good
I think it's an
American,
idea.
idea for a blockbuster movie to,
Hmm.
yeah. It
Yeah.
just
well, and if you're gonna add someone from American literature that would be like a federal agent eventually in adulthood,
Yeah.
Tom Sawyer sounds like a
yeah,
good.
It's
Like
a
he
good
was already
choice.
mischievous, you know.
it's either going
It's
to
probably
be
the
him
most
or
famous
Johnny
character ever.
Appleseed. I mean, come
Yeah,
on,
Right.
I think
it's
I think Johnny Appleseed would be long dead.
I don't know the timeline for John. He's not a real person. That doesn't matter.
He
Yeah.
was. He helped save the American Empire. Good
He
job,
discovered
Johnny Appleseed.
gravity.
Look
Come
at
on.
your. Oh, that's right. I thought he planted.
Huh?
I,
Oh,
that's the story. I'm going off elementary school. I haven't looked into Johnny Appleseed since then.
Yeah.
But
You're thinking
um,
of
yeah, Isaac Newton
Newton's
made
law.
gravity.
Isaac Newton. Yeah.
can
It was a
can I
joke.
just
This is how good we like this movie, guys.
can I
Uh,
just say, because obviously, a lot of comic book movies will do. Like, remember the X-Men movie where she's like, I don't want to transform into my blue skin anymore because the actor doesn't like the makeup anymore. In this
yeah.
one, they're like, ooh, we don't want to do these invisible man effects too much. So He's just gonna put white makeup all
Yeah.
over his
Yeah.
head, so we don't have to do it for most of his scenes. It's very
Also,
funny.
that's every Invisible Man movie.
Yeah, it's very like, all
Yeah.
right, we don't want to do the floating glasses every
When
2 minutes.
when
Right.
we cover what went wrong with the Hollow Man, which is also
It's like the same effects. It's the exact same
spoiler,
effects.
and also spoiler alert, it's the exact same rape problem
I was gonna say
with
he is
Yeah.
Hollow
also a
Man.
rapist in that, right?
Apparently, the '90s didn't understand the rape
And no,
thing.
the remake Invisible Man, he's also a sexual predator. I guess it just lends
Yeah.
itself to that,
Yeah, it
you
makes
know.
sense. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like
That's what else would you use those powers for?
because a woman isn't gonna go into like a men's locker room if she gains invisibility, you know.
Right. She would just be invited in regardless.
Also, I do want to say that it's funny. And by the way, I want to talk about that scene where M leaves and then the Phantom comes, but in a little bit. But it's also funny, like this movie, Stephen Norrington, who also did Blade, one of the best movies ever made. Um, he he does this thing, and I know it sounded good on paper. It sounds good when you tell me. Where during every action scene, he's constantly cutting between the teams. Like that, like so you'll see like Nemo throw a punch, and then it'll cut to the guy who just got punched by Quartermain, like falling to the ground. And then it'll
Mhm.
like show Quartermain throw a punch, and then or like shoot a gun, and then it'll like go across the room, and then Tom Sawyer, like that guy gets shot, and Tom Sawyer shoots a gun. Sounds like a real good idea to show how like the team's working well together. It's a mess in practical.
Yeah,
Like
it's
sometimes you're
insane.
like, who the fuck
Yeah.
am I looking at? You know, like
Yeah.
it's so weird looking, and everything's constantly cutting, and you're
Yeah.
like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, it's a fucking wreck. It feels like it like almost feels unprofessional. Like
Yeah.
I
I
don't
think
even know what that
to
really
me
And
means,
it's
but
probably
like
like
it
a
feels
budget
so
thing because you
weird.
could almost tell they could only do so much with like the special
Yeah.
effects, so
Yeah.
they
And it was
probably
a
should
Well,
have
huge
shoot it in a
story.
certain way.
and then
Yeah.
they bring up the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues. It is a cool design. The designs of this movie are very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks like a very sleek white ship. And so they're like, oh, we're going to go to France or Spain or something. We're going to go get Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so
Yeah.
they find themselves chasing Dr. Jekyll. It's a pretty cool action scene. But again, like this movie's so fast that you're almost like, did we need to waste our time on this?
Yeah, it's like a whole ass scene for like just getting a new member of the party who like was the
Yeah.
easiest one to convince.
I know.
Like it's
And
like
all-
it feels like such a plot point, but like it doesn't even matter.
And not only that, because like, okay, so in this movie, Mr. Hyde is like a Hulk style monster, but he still has like he's still Mr. Hyde. So in the book, if you haven't read it, the book he still had like he can talk to him. He's not like a vicious werewolf or something. He's just a psychopath.
Mhm.
So they like talk to him and they're like, hey, if you do this, we'll like forgive all the crimes from the book. And again, if you've read that book, Mr. Hyde's crimes were pretty bad.
Yeah.
Again, the same thing that we've been talking about.
Very,
He's
very
also-
sexual assault area of.
Did you see how I was talking my way around it and Josh just like said it out loud?
It's already not monetized.
That's what we were looking at. So then he's like, okay, I'll go. And then they like get another fight scene, and then they like Quartermain like he throws like a knife at M or at the Phantom, and like it stabs him, and then his mask comes off, and he takes off his mask, and then it's M from beginning, and he's like, oh, it's you, and then he's like, you have
Yeah.
no idea, and then he runs away. But like, I want to go back to that earlier scene. So that means that M was like got all this team together, and like it made me laugh so much, and then he just walked away. And I just like imagine him changing into his costume.
Yeah, really
Like a
bad.
Heavy
few
makeup,
people.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then kind of be like, guys, I know this is silly, but we got to do it. And then he has to come back in.
It's like we can do this without you. We can just
Yeah.
say you sent us.
It's like, hey man,
could
you
even
don't
be
have
down
to
there
do
with the
this.
group.
Yeah, it's like why do we have to do all this elaborate? Why don't we just kill him now? We'll
Yeah.
find out. So then they capture Mr. Hyde, and then they're like, okay, now we gotta go. Oh, and then they're like going to attack Venice, and they're blowing Venice into the ground. They're like bombing it, so it's sinking.
Hey.
Again, it's a good
Elaborate as
idea.
hell.
It's a cool, yeah. That is funny too, because you know Nemo's ship. It's very cool, but to get it to like fit in one of those tiny Venice canals, it's like clearly shrunken like 5
Oh
times.
right.
Like it's
And
like
then
it's like a super tiny
goes-
version of his submarine.
Yeah.
he goes, to fit in the canals, we'll have to surface. And they clearly just want to surface so that you can see how cool the design. It is the coolest design.
Yeah. The
But
top of the ship's cool, but it's like, what is there? A giant ocean underneath this like
and then
little.
yeah, that's what I was
Just
thinking. I was
floating.
like, wait, if it doesn't
I'm
fit,
so excited.
oh, I guess it doesn't fit this way, so it has to. But how is it fitting this way? Because
It's
check
very
it.
Right.
much.
It's
It's
like
like
a
the
shark.
periscope in the
And then
bathtub.
one
Yeah,
of
Yeah.
it's
the
Yeah.
one of the
ridiculous.
other funny
The
things is
crust of
that
Venice it floats beneath.
in the book of 20,000 Leagues, like Nemo, his crew is like this kind of cult like weird, like they're like as obsessed as Nemo, and they're like nameless, almost slaves, you know. And in the movie, he still has those. They just don't ever address how he got them or why they like follow him to the death.
Yeah,
It's like it's my
They mention
crew.
his crimes, his quote unquote
They do
crimes.
mention his
That's it.
cries.
His
Yeah.
weird past. Everyone has a. They try to do like the sin thing in the movie. Like everyone gets this scene where they walk down a hall and they break down.
Mhm.
They're just like, I know I'm bad, but I want to be good. And then the next
Yeah.
person's
Yeah.
like, I know I've been bad, but I can be good. And it's just like, yeah, we fucking know. All of you have the
Yeah.
same fucking
They're
problem.
You guys
very like,
all
oh,
have
I
the
have
same
very
accent.
non-specific sins I won't get
Yeah.
into because that Mina doesn't really. I mean, she was just attacked by Dracula.
Yeah,
Right.
she's
pretty
she's
blameless.
pretty pure.
But I mean, since then, if
She
she's
has
a
now
vampire,
sins.
she has
Yeah,
been
yeah.
murdered.
Right? Yeah, she's clearly.
She does murder a million people. That is cool. Like, so then they're blowing up Venice, and then they're like, "How are we gonna get to this? We need to like blow up a domino so that the dominoes stop." And they're like, "We need to get there." And then Tom Sawyer's like, "Check this out." And he brings out Nemo's car, but Nemo's
Yeah, and he's
like,
really good at driving.
"Whoa!" And it's like, Nemo, didn't you build this? How do you?
Yeah.
And also, it's super long. It's like what you draw as a kid, like a car. Like it's really
Yeah,
long,
yeah.
and there's very small tires. You know?
You're like comic
And-
book car.
Yeah, and every car is like a convertible, but it looks cool. And
Yeah.
so they're like, okay, we're gonna go do this, and they're driving. They're getting like shot at from everything because it's a cartoon.
And they're
and then
crashing
he
into
does-
stone pillars and just taking them out, no
Yeah.
consequence.
Oh yeah,
the
that
building
car
or
is
the
like
car.
a tank.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
not getting hit by the debris.
It's also
Fine.
famously the not roads of Venice because there's no cars. You
Yeah.
can
Right,
drive on
right.
the streets, but whatever, it's fine.
And so then they like, but while they're doing this, Nina's like flying with bats and just murdering everyone like on the roofs, shooting at them.
Yeah.
And it's like fun. This is a fun time. We're having a lot of fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's almost like you hear this movie described and you're like, man, this is way better than kind of what totally ends up happening, but it's
Yeah.
really cool in concept, you know.
And so
Yeah, yeah.
from there, they find out that someone's a bad guy, so they automatically assume the Invisible Man.
Right.
And so they're like, "Oh yeah, it's him." And then they're like, "Oh no, it wasn't. It was actually Dorian Gray." And the reason that Am brought them all together was because he wanted to get all their powers. So they've been like stealing the vial from Dr. Hyde. They took like skin samples from Invisible Man. Oh, also they kidnapped scientists because no Alan Moore story is ever complete without kidnapping scientists.
Right.
They
right.
like steal some of Mina's blood, and then I guess Quartermain, they're just
I-
like, I don't
I
know.
don't
Yeah, he doesn't have any
remember-
powers.
Well,
I
he's-
don't remember
he's
what
been-
they're doing in the book though. Clearly it's different. Obviously in the movie, I do not think anyone was stealing anyone's powers in the book.
In the book, it's much less of like it's more focused on getting the team together. So the actual like plot of the book is just that last chapter, remember? And then it's like
Vaguely.
they hire the character, like it ends up being like, oh, we've been hiring him to create terror.
Yeah, I know it's like
Alan
it's a
Moore.
conspiracy, but it's
Yeah.
not like the Rise of the Silver Surfer was kind of the same where it's like we're gonna use every power and
Yeah.
turn-
If you liked
make it
If you
evil.
liked Fantastic Four 2 Rise of the Silver Surfer, watch or read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. They're exactly the same.
No, this
Same
movie
age.
is like that
Don't read
movie.
it. Don't tell your parents. But so then they're like, oh, it was Dorian double crossed us, and he's like, he gets in like the escape pod of the Noculus, and he does this cool shot where he's like this, and they can't see him, and then he goes, "Roo!" So they see his face right away, and then they're like, okay, and then they're like, we're gonna catch him, and so then they catch him, or they're following him from Venice, and then they get like a record player. And then the record player's like, "Hey, by the way, it's me, M, the guy who hired you. I'm the bad guy. I'm the Phantom.
Right. Here's my whole story.
Here's my
You're
whole
like, well,
plot."
we know now. Well, that you know, it's funny because it's like a video, but it's like $18.99,
Yeah.
so it's
It's a
like
black and white video.
No.
box video.
Josh, this movie should not be confusing you this much. It's not a it's not a video. It's the first ever audio recording. So they're playing it on the thing, but they knew that Americans could not watch or just
A
listen to an
phonograph.
audio recording. So
So
then
they,
they show them recording the audio, but then they put an old timey
yeah,
filter on it. So
Yeah,
I
well,
guess
it's
you
just a
actually,
filter. It's
but they
insane.
also
It's
like
fucking insane.
they look at the camera like they're like
Yeah.
well,
because M has this line where he's like, "Oh, I made a traitor. To that end, I set my wolf among you sheep," and then it zooms in on Dorian Gray and goes, "Growl."
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Then
love the growl so
Dorian
much.
Gray goes, "I'm here too," and it's like, why would you? What if they had found this
I,
before?
know, I
Why
know,
would
why?
you admit your crime? And
When
then
one of the crew
I think
members
they
is just
mailed it to them.
dusting.
he goes, "It's me, Dr. Moriarty," and I wanted like everyone to look around, and be like,
Who the fuck?
"Who the fuck is that?
Yeah, we
Do
don't
you know
know who
that
you
guy?" Like, I
are.
don't know.
Yeah, I didn't read that book yet.
Yeah, like I don't know. So maybe we should call it Sherlock Holmes, I guess.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, okay, well, let's go chase him. And then like in the sonograph that again no one has ever created, they also figured out a way to have such a high frequency beep in the background that it sets off the bombs that they've set up. And so then everything explodes and they're like, oh no, we're trapped. And then Mr. Hyde's like, oh, I'll save you. And then he saves them somehow.
Yeah, we get
Oh
their
yeah, it's very like I'm not a bad guy anymore. It's like you were not that bad for most of the
Yeah,
movie.
you haven't been
yeah,
bad this
and
entire.
nothing really made you change your mind except
It's
for the
And
like
plot.
I think that's the weird thing too, is that like these characters, other than like Quartermain and Mina and Tom Sawyer, they're pretty despicable, like in their books. So
Yeah.
they can't reference them because, like, if you told us what Dr. Hyde's crimes were, we'd be like, "Oh, kill that guy! Like, kill him right
Yeah.
now! He's a monster!"
Get
right.
that potion away from that man.
Yeah, but and so they can't reference it, but they have to acknowledge that Dr. Hyde is the bad guy in his own story. So it's like this weird, like they just kind of like say you're bad without
Yeah,
like
it's based on
specific.
you reading the books, but
Yeah,
not that closely.
it's
They also everyone kind of gets like a character moment. To be fair, like he gets this, and there's like a father-son thing with Tom Sawyer and Alan Quartermain, where
yeah.
he's like,
Yeah.
because
I
Alan
hated that
Quartermain's
so
like,
much though.
my son died, but I'm gonna show you how to shoot a
Yeah.
gun.
And so this
So
is so
cringe.
funny.
I
So
know.
It was Sean
we'll
Connery
talk
was
about
cringe as
this
fuck in
scene
this
as
movie.
we get to the end because I want to spoil it because it's hilarious the implications. But yes, so and then they like the what's his face Captain Nemo from the beginning is like, I'm here to pay for my crimes because I knew I was bad. And then Dorian Gray's like the bad guy, so he's like, oh, look at me. And so they go to this castle, and the castle like they show us because then you find out like the Invisible Man is like, oh, I wasn't bad, I was just following them, and I figured you guys are gonna accuse me because I'm skeezy as hell. So I've been
Mhm.
following them. I'm gonna tell you, and then so they show what's going on, and they're like building this army, and it's legit like a YouTube CGI show. Like it's such bad.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the military Bin Laden secret base in
Yeah,
the mountain. Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
AI. It's like looks like it was AI before AI existed. Just like everything
Right.
looks a little off, you
Like
know?
I
Yeah.
also this is one of those types too where you're like, wait, I shouldn't think about this because it's in the Antarctic or something. This base or the Arctic, one or the other. It's not one of the poles. It's like the coldest place on Earth. They're building this massive army, and the Invisible Man's like, oh, I was spying on them. I just ran naked out here to where you guys are through like
Yeah. Well, and
sub-zero
he even
temperatures.
I'm
mentions like,
still
"Oh,
alive.
I'm a little cold." It's like, no, you'd be dead.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so then they get in a big fight. Mina Harker's like, "I'm going to kill Dorian Gray," because they had like a little relationship, not enough to mention. It seems. Oh my God, Josh left.
He,
Um,
he believed
see
in
if
that
we get him
relationship.
back. Yeah, Josh was very mad about Mina Harker. Oh, there he is. And so he's like, so they fight, and there's one of my favorite scenes is they're fighting, they're like cutting each other up, and then they're instantly healing. And Dorian
Yeah.
Gray goes, "We're gonna be at this all day."
Yeah. If that was real, I would have been very upset.
Yeah, and then she stabs him in the balls.
Yeah. I think Dorian Gray was definitely my favorite character for sure.
I will say a lot of the characters are very well done. It's just they're not super here, I think. Well, okay. So then
We
they're
don't get a lot of
like,
time to learn about them. I feel like everything's
Yeah.
super underbaked. Like it's like
Hmm.
I don't want another hour of this movie, but it's like it feels like everything just happened. Like they all
Right.
met, they ran to this Paris, they did this stuff, and it's like it's exciting kind of, but and it's like still kind of
It's
badly made. But it's like I don't know anything about these people as far as like why I should give a shit about them besides the fact that they're characters from literature.
Yeah, and if you think of like the Avengers, some of the best parts of the Avengers is when the characters are disagreeing. Like it's like
Yeah,
shows everyone's perspective. It's a good way to do character development without doing character development because it's like, oh, how would
yeah,
they each react to this situation? But in this movie, it's like Fast and Furious, where like every single person immediately knows the plan and the plan immediately works. You know, like
yeah,
nothing is ever even like getting double crossed by Dorian Gray. It's just like a 40-minute delay for them.
yeah. Not a
Like it
big deal. Okay.
doesn't really affect them. And so yeah, I think you're missing a lot of that. And I get the idea, like, oh, they wanted them to be working together. But it's like, but if you're gonna do that, then why have all the villains? You know, if like you're gonna work
Yeah,
together, then use, the hero uh well, I mean, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde doesn't have it, but use a hero of 20,000 Leagues, or like, you know what I'm saying,
right. Like Hellboy does a pretty good job of like
Hmm.
everyone disagreeing and like they're trying. It's kind of like it's a very. I kept on thinking of Hellboy during this movie. Like I don't know, just like kind of similar vibes. But like they do a good job of like the team is very different. They all argue, but they still kind of have the same
Right.
goal in mind at the end. And
Yeah.
this one just you can tell that they were just you can tell that no one agreed in real life on the set. Like all the
Yeah.
stories that you hear,
Right.
and it just brought down the production so much as far as
Yeah.
that goes. Like no one really seems like they're having that much fun, and I could see Sean Connery being like just such an asshole on set
Yeah.
and just
And I
like
think
killing the
like
vibe.
it's also the thing where these characters are you have like there's never that scene like in Hellboy where Abe and Hellboy are just kind of talking about like people in general, or like when
Yeah,
they're talking about like how they love how he's in love with Liz, and it's like there's never that, like every conversation in this movie is in service of the plot, which I know Twitter loves when everything is in service of the plot, but we don't get the character moments that makes us care about the plot, so it makes it
yeah,
harder to enjoy it as much.
yeah,
Because I think of like it's funny bringing up Hellboy because Hellboy is like this movie where it should all be about plot. It's like this creature from the World War II that they've plucked up is going to have the end of the world, but he's helping. But the
yeah,
whole movie boils down to like whether Hellboy and Liz are in love with each other or not. Like,
yeah,
and so it's like that's why Hellboy to me is my favorite movie because it's not really about the plot; it's about their relationships between each
yeah.
other. And so I think that this movie is missing that. And I
It's
Which
missing
think,
the
is
heart.
it
yeah,
is weird because Blade is all about how like good of a character
hmm,
he is and very
yeah,
low on plot, you know. So
yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
oh, why did it get like kind of switched around like this?
There's a lot of
yeah,
worse things out there than vampires tonight. Like what? Like me, Blade. Okay, so the other thing is, oh, but now I want to spoil a couple of things. I'm gonna spoil this last thing at the end. So, as William was saying, Tom Sawyer and Alan Quartermain have this father-son thing, and so he's like constantly teaching them, like, because the whole movie Tom Sawyer's just like shooting randomly. That's life.
yeah,
He's he's
He's
yeah,
American.
he's an impatient
Yeah,
boy. Yeah.
yeah.
and so it's an impatient man.
he's he's a
Um,
youth.
it's
He's
not gonna
he's
be.
his
We're not gonna be one of these Quartermain fans like
he's
Joshua
his
was.
surrogate son.
Um,
Wait, you need to set up that Moriarty is escaping with the Batman cape. He's gliding away.
Oh
See, but here's
yeah,
the thing. Okay, so he's
yeah,
like, "Oh, I'm gonna," because Tom Sawyer shoots all the time, and Quartermain's constantly like, "You should be able to do all this with one bullet." And so they're teaching him earlier, and so then Alan Quartermain gets stabbed, and Moriarty, yeah, he's like, "Oh, I gotta escape this castle," so he jumps out, and then he opens his coat, and it turns into like a glider. And if
yeah.
you think that looks ridiculous, it does.
It
It
was
looks so
absurd.
silly.
It's just a regular ass coat too when he
I loved
lands.
it.
And then
It
it
doesn't
turns
even look any
back.
different.
Yeah. And then he's like running away, and then Alan Quartermain's like, "You know what to do." And I was like, okay, this whole movie relies on whether a federal agent can shoot an unarmed man who's fleeing in the back of the head.
Yeah,
Like he's running away, he's not committing any crimes at the moment, and they're like, shoot him in
get
the
him,
head.
get
And
that
then he
bitch.
does it. They're like, I knew you could do it.
Yeah,
Take this back to your police departments and show them
yeah.
all your new
I win,
power that
Daddy.
you've gained.
I win.
So yes, and he does successfully shoot the unarmed fleeing man.
Yeah. Also, there
And
was
so
something else that happened in the castle too that I wanted to mention as well.
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So the way that Dr. Jekyll, or the way Dr. Jekyll becomes Mr. Hyde is he drinks this potion, and so they're remaking this potion in this lab at this castle, and there's this guy who's kind of like the main henchman. He
Mhm.
finds like a giant jar full of the Mr. Hyde potion, and he drinks the whole thing, and Dr. Jekyll's like, don't drink the whole thing.
Yeah.
But this guy turns into like a raging huge fucking monster, and he's huge and red, and he's fighting Mr. Hyde, and it's like this unstoppable battle. And at one point, Nemo's like, "How are we gonna beat this guy?" And Mr. Hyde's like, "Don't worry, he's going through the potion so fast, he's gonna turn back into a regular guy anytime." But like the way
He
he
does.
dies is he never turns back into a regular
Yeah.
man. He just gets crushed by the castle that is blowing up. And I
And
feel like that's the perfect example of this movie and its logic. Like
and I,
that's what it
Yeah,
all
like you
is.
had a perfect setup and you didn't do it.
and I'm
Yeah,
so
like-
I'm so glad that you brought this up because when he drinks the whole vial, because he's like pouring it on his head, you know?
Yeah, he's
And I was like, oh, how funny would it be if like he starts to grow and then he just explodes?
that would
You
have
know
been
who would have
amazing.
done
That
that?
would have been way
John
better.
Carpenter would have done that. And like again to talk about how this scene is a perfect like kind of encapsulation of the movie.
Yeah.
Before that happens, he's getting beat up by this super Hyde, and he's like, Nemo, Nemo,
Yes.
and then Nemo runs and he goes, "Get out of here!"
Yeah, I know. I love
And
that
you
so
called
much.
him. He was already escaping. You called him back.
He was saving the innocent people. He was saving the women and children.
Get
They
out
need
of
him.
here.
He's like, I just wanted to say what's up one last time.
Yeah.
We
I'm
bonded
out.
so much.
And then so then
I don't know if I can do this one.
The castle's falling on him, and you're like, oh, he's gonna turn into a regular person. It's gonna like,
Yeah.
but no, it just like the last time you see him, he's just a dude, or he's still the big monster, and then he
Yeah.
just gets crushed anyway. And it's like, oh, well, I guess
Right.
he could have just done that from the beginning.
hmm
And see, that was
Also-
another scene where like Quartermain's about to kill Moriarty with an axe. God, they're vicious, man.
Yeah.
And then the Hyde guys are about to die somehow too, and then that's when the whole place explodes, and so everyone kind of gets messed up, which is interesting because it's like, oh, both the hero and the bad guy kind of lost their footage, you know. But yeah, it's such a weird. And again, like, why you don't cut when like at the climax of your two biggest action scenes? Like, you should play
Right.
one out and then play another one out.
And then also whenever Nemo and Mr. Hyde are trying to get away from the big red guy, they get stuck in this like weird circular room.
Yeah,
And there's all these humongous icicles above them. And you're like, at any moment in time, those are going to fall down and this is going to get crazy.
yeah.
And then that also just doesn't happen.
And then
Someone breaks off one of
The
them.
big
That's
guy
it.
grabs one, yeah, and he's like, "Grr."
Yeah, these come off easily. We're setting this up for scares. And then they
Not
just
only-
like, the hole opens up in the room and they just walk out.
Yeah. And not only that, but okay, so this castle is like completely encompassed, but then I guess they just have a real nice atrium because it's just like a room that's outside, but it's all completely closed off by walls. But then there's a roof so that icicles could be frozen on the top of it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, what is this room for? Is this like
It was going to be a bathroom, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they were still renovating the,
Yeah.
the Arctic castle.
That would have been funny if it just cuts to Moriarty and he's like flying. He's like, my atrium.
Ah, the
That's my
icicles.
favorite." Yeah.
They were stronger than I anticipated.
Where will the icicles go?
Yes, I did really like to. Tom Sawyer has to fight. He thinks it's the Invisible Man, but it's just a different one. And so he's just a guy swinging a knife around
Yeah.
invisibly, like wildly.
There's a hilarious scene where they told Tom Sawyer that he's fighting a knife guy and he has a rifle and they didn't tell him how fast the knife was going to be going, so he's like this.
Yeah.
And the knife has to match his energy, so it's going like this. And you're like, guys, did anyone take a step back? It was like, hey, maybe we could throw the knife and he's blocking him or something. He doesn't have to
Yeah,
be.
I don't know why the knife guy is going at 300 miles per hour.
We don't even know who it is. We never even
I
seen
know.
this guy's knife
He's
skills.
so
I'm not even
sad.
afraid of him.
But that is a good because then he runs away and he kind of runs into like an armored flamethrower guy, and I was like, that would be a bad combo in a video game. That would really mess you up, you know.
So much
So-
of this movie feels like, because there's that scene where they get to Venice and they're like, there's a bomb somewhere in Venice. Find it before it causes a chain reaction that destroys the
Right,
whole city.
right.
And you're like, and it like I just wanted the time thing to come out and be like, time to go, time crisis.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
So very
like
video
the
game.
3-minute counter
Yeah.
ticking.
yeah.
That, yeah,
Every time they
this
shot
would have
someone,
been
they
an
threw an
amazing
ad in.
video game.
Yeah.
It
I
kind of
know.
has the video game plot, really. So
It really
And
does. Yeah,
so
and the
the
pacing.
other thing that I want to talk about now that we've told this plot is that, and I'm not one. I mean, you guys know we've reviewed Godzilla movies. We've reviewed a bunch of sci-fi and very effects heavy movies, and we don't really ever talk about the effects because like people are trying. People are
Yeah,
trying sometimes. Phil Lord, he's making his guys work 80 hours a week. You think
yeah,
you think that's good? But anyway, this is one of the biggest movies where every single scene is clearly shot on a set.
yeah,
And it's so especially because of like I think it's so noticeable because of how dark the characters are. Because it's like even Nina's like biting people as a vampire, and she's just fully lit as I'm lit right now. You know, like,
yeah,
she's like biting, like they're like killing people, and
it's
it's like this is how lit they are. It's like what
yeah.
the
it's almost like the same problem why like all kind of Disney Plus stuff looks fake now. That's all
Mhm.
shot on like that one big CGI set, and it's just
Right.
like it has that same like look to it of like a Disney
Yeah.
Plus show.
And I think that's
Yeah.
why it looks so boring because not only are their camera shots kind of boring, but they'll like leave one room and go to another room, but it's all the same lighting. It's all
Hmm.
perfect lighting, and so it ends up looking like a TV show more so than
Yeah,
an
Paris and
actual
Venice look
movie. Yeah,
indistinguishable. You can't tell the
yeah,
difference between those two
which is
places.
crazy because Blade and The Crow, he also directed. No, wait, was it Stephen Norrington?
No,
It was Alex whatever.
Alex Proyas.
You're right.
Yeah,
What the hell is Stephen Norrington direct?
he did Blade, this movie, and then some indie movie that he made himself, and then I think he
Oh,
had another
and
cult one.
something called The Last Minute, which I have not seen,
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
maybe
the
something called
last minute. Oh,
Deathbed.
Blade.
and
Yeah,
Death
but
Machine.
even
Yeah,
then,
Yeah,
Blade looks amazing. I mean, it's one of the best movies ever made, as we've all agreed.
as
Um,
we've all agreed.
and so
Andrew once
it,
tried to convince. The first time we ever met, Andrew and I and Josh were at a Wendy's, and we had a huge conversation with Andrew about why The Matrix was more influential than Blade, and Andrew would hear none of it.
oh
well,
yeah, I
here's the
remember
thing.
that because that's
We'll
insane.
we'll get
It was
into
the most
it
insane conversation I've
we'll
ever been
get
a
into
part
it when
of.
we discuss Blade.
Well, I just want to give
But
the listeners some context for
the
your
I
Blade
mean,
comment.
the
I would
important
put Blade is one of the best comic book movies, but that's
No, for
there's so many
sure.
and
bad
and
ones, you know.
also the important thing is that I'm right, and Blade is more influential. Blade's more influential than the Matrix, but we'll get into it when we talk about Blade. Okay, and the Matrix is good. It's a fine film. It's just
The Matrix is okay.
break some ground once in a while. But anyway, but Blade looks great. Like Blade has all those dark blues. It knows how to film stuff in the night. You know, like it never
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
creepy. Like I mean, that first scene where he comes out into the club is such a badass scene. And like
yeah.
not only that, but Blade, it's Wesley Snipes. Like all the action's good. Like, so I know this guy can do all the things that he
Right.
seems to have problems doing in this. You know?
That's why I think it was like Sean Connery fucking shit up, and then like they're just like I feel like the vibes were just bad. Like I
And
feel
I
like nobody was happy, and it just they didn't shoot what they needed to shoot. They didn't cover everything. They had to edit in between a lot of bullshit. It's like all the action scenes just feel clunky and like not prepared.
yeah, and the whole movie, and maybe I mean, he said that his main issue was most well, him and Steve Norrington and Sean Connery apparently got into such bad fights that like even the other actors were like, it's kind of like when your parents are getting divorced and they're like fighting in front of you.
Yeah,
I think at
Yeah,
one point, like the director told Sean Connery, like, "Well, just punch me then."
yeah. Damn.
And so, and I heard there was also like the studio was not, they had no faith in it. So they were like giving endless notes, you know, because like if the studio has no faith in you, you either get really lucky and they leave you completely alone or they note you into
Yeah.
LXG mode. They
Right.
Madam Web you, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, and so like clearly this wasn't the best, but it's not that bad. I think it was a
It's
lot
not
of
that
fun.
bad.
I
Yeah.
thought
I
I
liked
don't
watching it.
yeah, I don't know if I would like ever recommend it or even watch it again, but I was never like annoyed with it. I think the problem is this movie's been made a lot and every other version is better than this version. It's like eating at Burger King. It's not the
Yeah.
worst, but
Yeah.
am I going to Burger King? There's a McDonald's right there.
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Exactly.
almost like you could almost see why like the Dark Knight and Iron Man were such big hits, because until then, this is kind of what most comic book stuff was. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just kind of, you just kind of
They're
have to
really
roll
trying to
with
get to
it.
the formula. Yeah.
It's like you can watch The Matrix, but Blade exists. No, you don't.
No, they're
You
not
know,
even
Blade.
like similar tones. I mean, they do wear black leather in both of them, I guess. I
Right.
Oh,
don't
looks
know.
like we're finding some
And there's bullet
similarities
time.
already, guys. Wow. Walking back your statements already.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Um,
I remember I liked this movie when I was 13. Like we were talking about when we were choosing to do it, and like I really like the nostalgia trip was major. Whenever I was watching this
yeah.
just this morning, like I don't know, it's
It is.
there's
It
things
is
being
sad that it's sad that that guy, and you know what? Because I was looking him up. It's that he was supposed to do a reboot of The Crow, Stephen Norrington, and it just didn't work out. But it's like
mm,
everything since this movie has been like, oh, he was going to work on this, and then it didn't happen, and then this, and then it's like, oh, that sucks, you know.
And I wonder if a lot of
yeah,
it is like because of what happened on this one, he doesn't want to commit to anything until he's like 1,000% sure of what the deal is, and that's why he keeps kind of committing to stuff and then not doing it. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I don't want
yeah.
to do this. I don't want to go through this again. So let's try. Let me make sure that it's right.
It's like I wonder what he's doing in the interim. Like, is
I
he like
know.
shooting commercials or something?
Probably.
Did he
I don't
make a lot
know.
of money from
This
Doing
like
this
comic
this
books?
comebacks.
movie also had the worst sequel tease at the end, like
Oh
Oh
where it's
yeah,
yeah.
literally, because it's like they're all over Alan Quartermain's grave because he died from the knife wound, and then and it's like, oh, guess he's gone forever. And then it's like zooming in on his grave as like lightning is flashing, and then it cuts to
yeah,
credits. You're like, oh, don't do this. It just makes
yeah.
me sadder.
Just seeing
He's
the
yeah.
human folly of plans.
And for anyone asking, as William did, and I was also curious, Stephen Norrington started in special effects, so it seems that he has gone back to special effects.
Oh,
So good for
Mm.
that
you,
makes
buddy. We
sense.
need you back, though. Let's go. Let's make another Blade with Wesley Snipes, not with other people.
I was gonna say they're making one. It doesn't seem like it's going well. So
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
really?
this movie. I mean, it's a fun time. You're not really gonna get anything from watching or not watching it. I don't. I think it. I don't think it's as bad as its reputation because like people act like
Yeah,
this movie is the worst movie ever made. It's like,
it's
no, it's just
comprehensible.
it didn't. It just didn't work.
Yeah, yeah,
And even like, yeah, I think everyone's pretty serviceable. I think it's just like this is one of the rare times where this movie's like an hour and 50 minutes. It should have been like 2.5 hours long. There needed
yeah,
to be
yeah.
more.
We needed more.
like if you had just, if this was on Disney Plus and it just started auto playing after She-Hulk, you'd be like, yeah, another modern Disney show. I get it. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't think anything of it. It's about that good, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Good job, Disney. You really killed it.
Lowered the
Yeah.
bar. That's not a compliment to Disney or this movie.
Right, right.
They're both
It's just a fact.
pretty mediocre, but
Yeah,
But yes, LXG. I also like that. Like you can very well tell that after the movie came out, like someone in marketing realized that they could just call it LXG, and so like in all the previews, it's like LXG, but like
right.
they never refer to it as that or talk about that
Yeah, and it's
anymore.
like not even like that obvious what LXG means.
Yeah,
Like it looks like Roman numerals
yeah. Half the time when I've been putting
with a
it in,
G.
I've been putting ELX or something like that.
Yeah,
But it's a good movie, guy. It's okay. Go check it out if you're in for some fun time. It's on Hulu. It doesn't cost
yeah,
you anything. Do you want to
yeah.
see Sean Connery one last time? Well, check it out. Or go watch Marnie. That's also a good movie with Sean Connery. It's by Alfred Hitchcock. They're
go
very
watch Finding
comparable.
Forrester.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're the man
What's
now,
that?
dog.
No, I like that one. What's that one where he's like tells his bully that he's secretly gay and the bully gets Hearts of Atlantis.
I've never
Go,
seen it.
Oh, I
go
never
watch
saw
Hearts
that
of
either.
Atlantis where Sean Connery shames a closeted bully for being gay.
Well, there's also Entrapment. Entrapment with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Entrapment's a crazy movie because it
Mhm.
was like a huge hit, and I was like, "Why is this movie a huge hit?"
That's
Yeah.
weird to me. That's also the plot of the Thomas Jane Punisher, where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna out this gay mobster," so he dies. It's like Jesus, this is harsh.
I think that's fun time.
So many layers of dark.
I feel like in the '90s, outing gay people was like a pretty big plot point that a lot of movies use, way more than they should have. That's
Yeah.
a story for another day. But anyways, guys, check us out. We'll be back next week with another stinker that we try to fix.
But a fun
Yeah.
one you'd want to hear about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We
this
turn
one I think
schlock
people
into
wanna
high
hear
art
about
here at
this.
the Bomb Squad.
Guys, let us know if you watched this movie, and more importantly, let us know if you read the comic and if that made a difference.
Let us know when you get to the scene where the Invisible Man dies in the comic and how you feel about that, because it's
Let
one
us
of the
know.
most horrific things I've ever read.
Andrew, you can't be that close to the camera.
Take a shot every time there's a SA scene, and you're gonna be drunk.
Please,
Chapter.
if you're gonna get that close, look away.
Yeah, please
Don't do that.
Don't do the POV shot,
Hey,
please.
No,
No,
I'll be over.
I like it though. What if I look up to you guys? Should I leave? Guys, am I gonna leave this part into the podcast? Find out next week.
Probably, yeah.
The answer is yes. I'm only gonna cut the part out where we were like, "What the hell happened to Josh?" But yes, guys, we'll see you next week on the Bomb Squad. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Bye.